crowd. Well, good morning, and welcome to Chicago, Neuroscience 2019. I am Diane Lipscomb, and it has been my enormous privilege to serve as the president of the Society for Neuroscience at the start of our 50th year celebrations. Yes, applause. As of this morning, our meeting registration for the first day of this year's 49th annual meeting is 26,815. I'm going to begin by expressing my heartfelt thanks to the many members of the Society who have helped to develop this year's program. First, to the staff who work behind the scenes day in and day out. And special thanks to Paula Cara, the Senior Director of Meeting Services, and her incredible team. So thank you all. And I also want to thank the SFN volunteers who serve on Program Committee. This is a committee that is by scientists for scientists, and they put together just a tremendous program for this week. So thank you for their hard work, and special recognition to our fabulous program chair, Patricia Janik, and her co-chairs, Sheena Jocelyn and Kang Shen. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Trish. Last but not least, thanks to the speakers, the awardees, and, of course, to all of you for being here, attending this incredible meeting this week. It's a thrill to have you here, and I hope that you're going to have an amazing week. So this is, of course, because of you all, the most exciting neuroscience annual meeting in the world. And it's that most exciting meeting in the world, again, because of you all being here. So I'm not sure whether, as you were walking in, you saw this giant cube outside in the Grand Concourse. It's right outside here as you were coming in today's lecture, and this is called Neurospace, and I understood, although I didn't go out there, there's a very long line waiting for people to go in there. This is an art installation by the Society for Neuroscience in partnership with Arctic House. And the artist who led this installation is Refik Anandal. When you get in there, you'll see that this is a real merging of technical databases that were provided by John Morrison, and they include some of Cahal's original images as well as human neuron images. And what they've done is to give you this beautiful rendition of what they imagine it might be like inside the human brain. So the installation also utilizes AI methodologies, and I know that Refik is a huge fan of today's speaker. This is an installation that's debuting here at Neuroscience 2019, but there's more to come in Neuroscience 2020, so stay tuned and don't miss out. When you walk in, don't worry, you're going to come out at the other end. It's actually really super fun, and so take advantage of that. It's going to be here the whole week. The other thing I want to stress, of course, is, and to really recognize that the Society for Neuroscience is, of course, one of the largest organizations and community of neuroscientists in the world. But no one country holds the monopoly on innovation. And knowledge, of course, as we know, is built from a foundation of important ideas that are irrespective of country borders. So I want to extend a warm welcome to our colleagues who have traveled here to represent more than 74 countries. So thank you for being here. You make the society what it is. Despite our deep conviction that the society is richer as a global community, some of our members were denied US travel visas to attend the meeting. We believe passionately in the importance of exchange of ideas. And so these scientists are presenting their work through the Society for Neuroscience's Science Knows No Borders program. While this is not a substitute for being here at the meeting in person, this program gives voice to our colleagues that would have had none. There are 10 presenters who have used this option, and their presentations are identified by a sticker that says Science Knows No Borders. The Society, of course, supports scientific discourse as the surest path to advance knowledge and to catalyze new ideas. And it is obvious to us as scientists that a person's appearance, their diction, their accent, and who they choose to love tells us absolutely nothing about the potential of a person to contribute to neuroscience. Yes. And so, with such need in this world and so much left for us to understand, let's remember to give voices to all members of our community. Question scientific premise, dig into data, ask for clarification, and value scientific discourse, because these are the core of what it means to be a scientist. But do so from a position of mutual respect. SFN is a place and a community that does not tolerate harassment of individuals of any kind, and it is the responsibility of us all to promote an environment of shared and common values. At the presidential special lectures, you will hear about discoveries and technologies, developments that have literally changed the world. Some of you will be on this stage in years to come, and many of you have stood where I stand now in years past. Many of you will present research this week that will contribute to an innovation, a discovery, a device, a method that will have an impact on the field. And this is the exciting thought and the exciting thing about being a researcher today in neuroscience. So now what you've all been waiting for today, the dialogues between neuroscience and society, you have the opportunity to hear from a scientist who has literally changed the world. This talk is made possible by generous support from Elsevier. And the dialogue series was created to explore ways in which neuroscience intersects with the global community. Elsevier supported the dialogue series for nearly 20 years, and I know there are Elsevier representatives here today, so thank you all for your long-standing support for this unique and inspiring event. So during the lecture, the staff are going to pass out note cards. Please write questions that you have for our dialogue's guest on the note cards, and then they'll pass them to the society staff, who will collect them and bring them to our moderators. Okay, now, this year's speaker is Dr. Fei-Fei Li. She opens our annual meeting, the start of the Society's 50th year celebration. Dr. Li is a professor of computer science and director of the Stanford University Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence Institute. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree in physics from Princeton with high honors, and her PhD in electrical engineering from California Institute of Technology. She also formerly served as the vice president for AI machine learning at Google Cloud. She is, without question, a pioneer in AI research, the inventor of ImageNet, which changed society and is considered an inflection point in AI development, moving it from a lab and into the world. Not satisfied with this, Dr. Li is also a vocal advocate for developing and using technology to improve humanity, and she was recognized as the 2016 Global Thinker for Foreign Policy. Dr. Li will discuss the transformative potential that AI and machine learning pose for society from her unique perspective as a scientist and an early scholar in neuroscience. And she also brings ethical discussions and considerations to this field. A leading voice for the future technologies to augment and not replace the human experience. So with that, please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Fei-Fei Li.
Thank you, Diane.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Diane, and thank you for all the organizers of SFM for inviting me to come here and share with you some of our research and work. And I feel quite honored that SFM was my very first academic conference I attended when I was a first-year graduate student. And here I am returning to a home base, so thank you again. So I'll share with you a little bit of what our work has been in artificial intelligence, and more importantly, where I think AI should be going. And of course, it's needless to say that we're observing the dizzying rising of AI in the recent few years. You're probably very familiar with the right picture on the screen, which is Google's Alphabet's DeepMind computer AlphaGo playing with a human master in one of the most, considered one of the most intelligent games of mankind. And of course, we all know in 2016, the machine beat the human master. In fact, the quest for making thinking machines, or sometimes we call them intelligent machines, has started more than 60 years ago. We all know British mathematician and computer scientist Alan Turing posed this audacious question to humanity: can we make machines to think? So on the left is a picture taken many decades ago, before AlphaGo, in the 70s, by an AI pioneer, Dr. John McCarthy. He actually is the very person responsible for coining the term artificial intelligence, along with AI pioneers like Marvin Minsky. He was also the founding director of Stanford's AI lab. So I put these two pictures together to show you the relatively short span, but still a span of more than 5 decades of effort in the field of AI on the quest for making intelligent machines. The field of AI I work in particularly is called computer vision, and that has also seen a tremendous growth and progress in the past few decades. A decade or two before I entered the field of computer vision, we started grappling with this question of what is there in the pixels, or what is there in the visual world? Human brain clearly understand it. How do we make machines to understand it? So this is an example of an early paper that shows some of the early attempts to understand what's in this rich visual world is by recognizing lines. Neuroscientists, we owe it to you guys to tell us back from the Hubel and Wiesel study that edges and lines are important in human visual processing. So this is an early work in computers reflecting that thinking. Then a decade later, this is around the time I entered my own study in the field of computer vision. The field is starting to look at a few more practical problems that can connect us better. For example, recognizing digits by computers, or recognizing a specific object in a scene. So again, these are very, very early attempts to understand the pixel world that is so rich and so important for humans and intelligent animals. I remember entering the field around that time thinking, oh my God, it's going to be hundreds of years before we can do anything close to what human vision can do. Well, a decade later, we see some major breakthroughs. today, computers can recognize everyday objects in pictures with really high fidelity. And on this journey, in the quest of creating visual intelligent machines, I feel very humbled and also privileged that my students, collaborators and I have participated in the progress of computer vision. Some of you might have heard of the project called ImageNet, which was an attempt to reboot the thinking of computer vision and machine learning using big data to drive the learning of object categories. Around 2010, we rolled out an international challenge to invite the whole world's computer vision researcher community to participate in ImageNet challenge. And one of the primary tasks for this challenge is to build machines to recognize 1,000 different everyday objects. And many of you might know that a historical moment came in 2012 when Professor Jeff Hinton from Canada and his students won that ImageNet challenge using a fairly old algorithm, family of algorithm called convolutional neural network. And that particular result brought the classification error down in a surprisingly significant way. And since then, the results of ImageNet challenge has just steadily improved, the errors falling, even falling below what a typical human represented by one Stanford graduate student would do. So the deep learning revolution, many consider has begun in the year of 2012 because of this ImageNet challenge work. And how did we get there? Historians will have to write this for us, but many of us believe the convergence of three important technical advances in the past couple of decades, or more than a couple of decades, have led to the deep learning revolution. The first is the advance of hardware and computing, especially driven by Moore's law. We see faster and faster chips and bigger memory. And the invention of GPU enable the kind of parallel processing that would in turn drive massive algorithms like neural network. Second force that is very important to drive this revolution is the algorithms themselves, especially the rise of statistical machine learning. And of course, the particular family of algorithm dating back again to the root of neuroscience is neural network, which people call deep learning. And the last but not the least, an important force comes with the rise of internet and digitization of information. Big data become a huge component that's so important to drive these high capacity models and bring us the deep learning era. Perhaps the biggest change as a scientist working in this field for the past 20 years that I have been seeing is that AI, or what we call, some of you see it as deep learning, but AI is no longer a niche laboratory science. It has entered not only daily life, but is driving the fourth industrial revolution. If you look at measures coming out of the business world in any way, whether you're looking at how industry is revolutionizing their own work through the use of deep learning, or the blossoming of startups and entrepreneurial opportunities that is using AI and machine learning, or just the estimate of global AI markets by many think tanks, all these curves are just going upward towards the future. So no matter how you see it, the impact is happening. And this is an impact that frankly exceeded many of our expectations as scientists who entered this field as a sheer scientific curiosity in 20 years ago or 30 years ago. But now we see it as a real force of change of our society. Speaking of the force of change, Of course, we're heartwarmed by applications that would use this kind of technology to help people. This is the first blind person who test drove Google's self-driving car. And you see the smile on his face, the sense of liberation that autonomy can bring to someone who couldn't have driven without this technology is very uplifting. But is that all there is? Is this technology just going to bring utopia? I know that by 2019, nobody in this audience is thinking that this technology is only going to bring out the forces of good. We should be thinking about a much more comprehensive impact of what this technology is bringing. For example, those of you who have kids, or especially teenagers, might appreciate this. It's changing our culture, right? You might get teenagers starting to laugh at the way we talk to their parents' generation, talk to a piece of machine. And that change is going to come slowly and subtly. And some of you might be amused by this change. Some of you might not see this as a bad change, and some of you might be horrified to see very impolite young people. But there are even more serious changes coming. The social awareness now is rising to see what machines might impact, whether it's job displacement, or machine learning bias and discrimination, or infringement of personal and community privacy. These are real issues that's not happening in the future, but happening today, using advanced technology involving machine learning, computer vision, natural language processing, and many sub-areas of AI. So one of my favorite scientists is Albert Einstein, so I like his quotes. So here's one. Even many years ago, he has said, it has become appallingly obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity. So the most important word or reminder Einstein has for us is the word humanity. Personally, as an AI scientist, while I feel extremely humble, privileged to be part of this change and to contribute it to the progress of AI and to continue to do research that we would like to innovate for the future, I have been thinking for the past several years now that where should AI be going? What is the next chapter we should write together as scientists, academians, educators, innovators about AI? And that whatever we do with AI is intimately related to the future of our society and our humanity. So I have been thinking a lot about a new approach to AI, and I'm here to share with you this approach called human-centered AI. And at its core, human-centered AI is about human values and bringing that value and awareness into the development and deployment of this technology. And we define this in 3 principles or pillars. The first one is the development of AI must be guided by concern for human impact. The second is AI should strive to augment and enhance us, not replace us. And the third is AI must be more inspired by human intelligence. And I want to spend the rest of this talk sharing with you some of the details and research that is centered around each of these 3 principles. And also, I'm very proud where I come from, Stanford University, about half a year ago, with the leadership of a neuroscientist and our president, Mark Tessier-Levine, that we've launched the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered AI as part of this effort to promote a new way of thinking about the future of AI research and education. So let's just talk about the first principle. The development of AI must be guided by the concern for humanity. At the core of this is that we're advocating to rethink AI no longer as a subfield of computer science. AI now is too big, too broad, and potentially too impactful to all of us, so that it should become an interdisciplinary field, especially inviting other sciences and social sciences and humanities studies in the study and research of AI, so that we can understand, anticipate, and guide its human impact and societal impact. So here, I'm just going to use one problem or case study to demonstrate the importance or the progress of human-centered AI in this particular interdisciplinary approach. And this is a case study about machine learning bias. It's an issue that concerns many of us here, that a lot of people say, in this data-driven approach, garbage in, garbage out, when we have a biased system starting from data all the way to decision-making, it'll have dire human consequences, whether we're making financial decisions, HR decisions, law enforcement decisions, and so on. So I guess I'm going to be a little biased myself, and all the work I'll show come from Stanford collaborations. But I just want to say that globally, many scientists and social scientists are working on this issue, and it's a rapidly progressing field that is very heartening for me. So to turn machine learning bias into machine learning fairness study, there are many approaches. For example, we can specifically look at dataset fairness. I'm collaborating with two Princeton professors on re-examining ImageNet and a historical data set and how to rebalance that. Here's an example of the programmer category in ImageNet, where we look at the gender, skin color, and the age distribution and use algorithmic ways to rebalance that data set. But there's also work done in algorithmic fairness, where my colleague James Zhu from Electrical Engineering Department and Londa Shibinger from History Department at Stanford are looking at a new way of algorithmically balancing natural language embeddings that carry the kind of natural bias humans already do today, which is transmitted to our data. For example, doctors, men is to doctors as women is to nurses. These are the kind of bias we already exist in human society, but through their algorithmic fairness work, we're rebalancing and unbiasing this. We also have mathematicians at Stanford, or theorists in computer science like Professor Omar Ringgold, looking at a mathematical definition of fairness and algorithm, and also collaborating with doctors like cardiologists to look at long-tail distributions in medical data and how we can offer fairness in computing. Well, we have also statisticians and natural language, machine learning and linguists, scientists, looking at causal reasoning and counterfactual robustness using computing fairness. Clearly, I'm not showing you the technical details of the work. I do want to just use this opportunity to bring to your attention these ongoing work that I find very exciting. We also have a management science professor collaborating with law enforcement the collaborators, and using law enforcement data to look at how the decision-making part of the AI system or pipeline can become more fair. For example, we can use machine learning or natural language algorithms to turn a vanilla document of law enforcement that can carry race information through names, address, zip codes, hair color, and all that, into a race-blind document, so that it will help decision-making in law enforcement to become more fair. a similar decision-making fairness work is happening between education school and the Stanford computer science department to look at how we can use a reinforcement learning method to increase fairness in decision in uncertain situations. Last but not least, at Stanford, the computer science department is collaborating with our ethics and political scientist, Dr. Rob Reich, in creating a new kind of education, new curriculum on computers and ethics and public policy. And in fact, we collaborate closely with Stanford's Ethics, Technology, and Public Policy Center on developing new classes or developing new contents for existing classes. These are all the ongoing effort in just this one example of using interdisciplinary approach, inviting historians, political scientists, education researchers, policy researchers into the field of computer science so that we can together combat the problem of machine learning bias. But in the field of interdisciplinary AI research for understanding societal and human impact, at Stanford we have researchers studying on AI and its impact on the future of work. We have researchers and collaborations happening on autonomous robots and vehicles on societal and policy impact. We also have political scientists and machine learning researchers collaborating on using machine learning to improve refugee policy through better algorithmic refugee placement systems. So these are just examples of the first principle. Now let's turn attention to the second principle, where the verb that I want you to remember is augment. AI should strive to augment and enhance humanity, not replace us. McKinsey has reported 2 years ago, even if we freeze our technology today, 50% of work activities happening today can potentially be automated. This will cause a huge issue in the landscape of labor market, and we have to get ahead of this. We have to get ahead of this through economic understanding, through policy, but we also can get ahead of this through technology. So, like I said, the public fears the machine replacement, but there is a scenario that machines, in fact, there should be a scenario where machines work alongside humans to augment and enhance us. And here, I want to show you a case study in AI-assisted healthcare delivery. And this is something I have been doing for the past 8 years, collaborating with many people from computer science to medical school, Stanford Medical School, to multiple healthcare sites throughout our country, from Stanford itself to Utah to San Francisco. And the bottom line is that we believe that we can enhance clinicians' human care with the assistance of intelligent systems, just like we can enhance the ability of human drivers with driving assistant packages. And why does this problem matter? I want to show you some pretty scary statistics. Every year, 250,000 Americans die because of medical error, and the number is increasing. Just hospital-acquired infection alone, which translates to bad hand hygiene practice to a large extent, will kill almost 100,000 patients. It's the third biggest killer in American hospitals. To put this in perspective, car accidents every year kills about 30,000 people on the road in our country. This is 3 times as many. And for elders living alone, falling and injury is costs more than $36 billion. And with the aging society, this cost is rising. So no matter how you look at it, from human life and healthcare policy and economics point of view, this is a huge issue. We need to improve the quality of care and also with our awareness of the clamping down the rising cost. So using hand hygiene as an example, we have been collaborating with Stanford Children's Hospital and Utah's Intermountain Hospital, and my team brought the self-driving car technology to our hospital by installing smart sensors that are looking at depth information in the hospital environment. And these orange dots represent sensors installed in the hallways and patient rooms of a ward in the Intermountain Hospital. And this is huge data, but also this is data that protects privacy of individuals. Every second, we're getting 11 million points out of all these sensors. And then what this can give us is a comprehensive 3D reconstruction to the seconds of what this environment looks like. Not only we know the environment, the physical environment, we also will know the humans and their activities in this environment. And using computer vision algorithms, we can begin to identify important areas of healthcare delivery, in the healthcare delivery process, such as patient bed, sink, bathroom, and so on. And then what we can do is to start using a back-end deep learning algorithm to watch how clinicians enter and exit a patient room, which is by protocol, they should be cleaning their hands. And this is an example on the left of a clean exit, meaning they wash their hands. This is an example of an exit that is not compliant. And we can reconstruct the environment by looking at areas of hand hygiene dispensers, tracking clinicians' trajectories, understanding patient situations, and put together important statistics like clinician behavior in and out of different rooms and throughout the ward. And not only we use computer vision and smart sensor technology to observe what can happen in this environment. Actually, let me also say that before this, what do people do now, you might be wondering? Well, the bad news is the technology that we use today is pretty medieval. Well, hospitals literally hire human monitors with a clipboard and a piece of paper and a pen and stand by hospital hallways and put check marks and watch people cleaning their hands. And you can imagine how expensive, sparse, erroneous, subjective this process is. And now we can automate this 24/7 without fatigue. But we're taking a step further. Together with human-computer interface and design experts, we are testing out how we can change clinical behaviors through different kind of alarm system, whether it's lighting up a bed, lighting up a monitor, projecting scary hand pictures on the wall. We're still testing this and try to close the loop from AI observation all the way to clinical behavior change and patient outcome. Another example I'm going to briefly say that we work on is aging homes. This is an increasing societal problem. We want our seniors to live happily, independently, but also to catch them at the moment of vulnerability. Many people are testing out wearable devices, and that is also a viable path, but there are many issues with wearable devices. So we are looking at similar smart sensor technology I just showed earlier, whether it's depth sensor or thermal sensor, to augment this technology. Here we show that our system can analyze where activities of independent living happens and when it happens. And this is critical to understand and catch early signs of dementia, understand if there is social isolation, monitor nutrition intake, and all kinds of clinically relevant behaviors. It is also really important. We can also use this technology to understand gaze changes that is hard for a wearable device to catch. And this can be very indicative of early signs of dementia, Parkinson's disease, rehabilitation, stroke, and many other conditions. So overall, our work in healthcare shows that AI has a role to play to augment human care and to enhance human capability and to lower the cost of healthcare, improve safety, and give caretakers the time back to patients. This is the #1 reason for nurses and doctors to be excited to work with us. They want their time back with the patients. They don't want to be charting or just watching, looking at monitors. Of course, AI technology is also improving healthcare surgery technology. It's aiding drug discovery and chemical synthesis. It's also showing up in education sectors that it can become a potential teacher's aid to especially lifelong learning and personalized tutoring. I also have robotics colleagues today working on rescue robots that can go to places that humans shouldn't be going to endanger their lives, such as deeply under the water or in disaster zones. I can say, the list goes on and on. This truly excites me, but let's just turn our attention to the third principle, which is AI must be inspired by human intelligence. Why do we want this? Because we just painted this picture of AI augmenting humans. If we think machines can work alongside humans, can be collaborative, machines need to understand human intelligence and at times possess the kind of human intelligence that are required in this process. Well, where are we today? Here's an example of the best computer vision algorithm we can do today for object recognition, trained on ImageNet, using ResNet or whatever fancy algorithms we have. And the computer can tell us this picture has a dog, a couch, and a man. It can even see the coffee cup if it needs to. But you and I don't see this picture this way. We see a whole different story. We see emotion. I at least see the guilt look on the dog's face. And we might even be predicting what's going to happen next to the dog or to the couch or to the coffee mug. So there's a lot happening. And that's the contrast of today's AI with humans. I don't need to convince a room of neuroscientists that human intelligence is dynamic, multisensory, complex, uncertain, interactive, whereas today's AI is very narrow, static, disembodied, and the list goes on. So as an AI scientist, my passion is also to enable tomorrow's AI with the kind of human intelligence or capability that is much more complex. It doesn't have to replicate how the neurons did it exactly, but it should be deeply inspired, just like we were inspired by Hugo and Wiesel many decades ago. So I want to show a few work that focus on the interactive nature of natural intelligence and how that inspires a couple of our ongoing research projects to enable the machines to see the world or interact with the world in interactive and rich way. So the first collaboration is with computational neuroscientist Dan Yamens and his postdoc and our joint students about enabling the AI agent to interact like a baby. And again, this audience is really home audience to some of the most phenomenal study of developmental neuroscience study, developmental cognitive science study, and we're very inspired by some of the work like Alison Kopnick, scientists in the crib and so on, that human intelligence don't develop by someone reading 1,000 objects with labels to them. That's just not the way babies learn. Babies explore, they break things, they're driven by curiosity. So we developed an AI system that is intrinsically motivated by curiosity. We develop a world model neural network that predicts what the world would look like by baby's action or the AI agent's action. We also, in the meantime, there's a self-model network that predicts the error between what the world looks like and what I think the world will look like. And then there is a whole set of learning policies through reinforcement learning that antagonists the world to produce the kind of maximum curious effect. So this is an ongoing work, but some early results show that our blue curve, which is our AI baby agent, is showing a bit of behavioral pattern that is more similar to humans, where it goes through an early stage of understanding its self-ego motion, but start to focus on objects without anybody telling them, no supervision, starting to focus on object and start to interact with one object and two objects and so on. So this is early work. I'm just showing you a teaser slide of where this kind of machine learning and AI development is going by getting inspired with developmental data and studies of developing a new way of learning of the world rather than the typical supervised labeled learning that we see earlier. Of course, whether you're a baby or adult, you constantly interact with the world and constantly interact with the physical world. So this is a collaboration with robotics professor and students and postdocs. And we are very much, again, inspired by how humans are tool users. We're not only tool users, we're creative tool users. We are planners. We have multi-stage planning. One of the most exciting area that I see in AI today is to reboot robotics from planned, narrow scenarios to this kind of complex reasoning, planning, perceptual, uncertain environment. So here's an example of learning to use one tool in different ways in different scenarios. A hammer can put in a peg by banging, but you can use it in a side way to push away objects. And this is the beginning of the kind of tool using and interaction with the physical world that machine learning community is taking an interest, and I'm personally very interested in. Of course, to understand this, we need to bring vision into the picture. This is a new development in robotics where a lot of computer vision techniques are helping roboticists to understand the real world and the complexity. For example, any tool has its different affordance depending on the different interacting points. And we can introduce this idea into a scenario where the goal is actually, let me just go back, where the goal is to put this peg into the hole, but we devised an algorithm for the machine arm to use this hammer in very different ways, using different affordance to get the object in question into its desired location. Sorry, this is here is another step we take is how about composing new tools? So this is a work actually still under review, that by recognizing different grasping points and affordance and how they can interact with the physical world, we can put together new tools for different tasks. The pushing tool is different from the reaching tool, it's different from the hammering tool, even though we're using the same building block. And then we can use the new pushing tool, hammering tool to perform the desired task. And here's just a bunch of nice videos showing you that we can take this kind of multi-stage planning into different scenarios, whether it's clearing a desktop or inserting objects into holes or crossing certain bridges. If there's any real roboticists sitting in the audience, you might be asking me for real demos. Well, here is one. And, one challenge in robotics research is that not only we have to do all the planning and learning, we also have to recognize real-world scenarios and real-world state. And this is where computer vision can play a big role in this ongoing research. And our next step is clearly to combine our understanding or composition of tool use with multi-stage planning to create real-world multi-stage tool invention as well as tool affordance. So these are some of the early work in combining computer vision, machine learning, and robotics to interact with the physical, messy world. Last but not least, how about interacting with humans themselves for machines? And this is a collaboration with a human-computer interaction and social engineering professor at Stanford. And we know humans learn by interacting with humans. Our goal here is to create an AI agent that can have conversation with humans with the goal of learning new knowledge. And of course, we do vision, so we want to expand the AI learning agent's knowledge of the visual world through asking questions to humans and getting answers. So there's a lot of people engaged in this kind of visual conversation. For example, in Instagram, people post pictures and talk about it. So here's a cute animal, and the person who took the picture says something like this. This kind of dialogue or conversation is not very useful. It's fun, but it's not very useful for an AI agent to learn. What we really want to get is for the human to help the AI agent to expand its knowledge of the world by offering the knowledge or information of this picture. In this case, is identifying this animal as a red panda. But normal human conversation might not go that way. So our goal is to create this AI agent that would participate in a human conversation. So to solicit human dialogue back and get that going so that it can learn. So put this in a system flow. Here is the picture, and here is a person who might be engaged in a conversation. And this is the AI agent we're creating. And the agent has two goals. The first goal is to engage with the human by asking questions. And then the second goal is to do after doing that, it expands its AI knowledge. So it's a dual-purposed agent. And I don't expect you to see all the details, but I just want to show you under the hood is a reinforcement learning algorithm that can optimize two objectives, the engagement objective and the knowledge objective, to create the system is called Elia, the AI agent, to enable Elia to engage in human conversations so that its knowledge of the visual world is expanded. here are some examples where, given a picture like this, Elliot is the last green line, is able to ask interesting questions like, is the animal standing on snow? Whereas a vanilla model would just say things like, what animal is that? And there are some ablation studies that I'm not going to get into. The bottom line is the green questions generated by our AI agent are quantitatively more engaging. And as a result, we're able to expand the agent's set of visual knowledge so it continues to learn on an ongoing basis. And with this expanded knowledge, it's able to recognize more and more things in the world and learn more and more. And here are just a few examples of how the machine can recognize interesting objects in the world like magpie and dahlias and feta cheese that it wasn't, it didn't start off knowing, but gradually accumulated this knowledge. So I want to just finish by reminding us that was kind of a whirlwind summary of the kind of research that's going on at Stanford and mostly in my own lab on this, built upon this 3 principles of human-centered AI. At Stanford, we're committed not only to do research, but also equally committed in the education and outreach of human-centered AI work. We're engaging students, we're engaging artists, we're engaging policymakers, journalists, lawyers, business leaders, and just civil society at large to promote this kind of human-centered AI thinking. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Fei-Fei.
Thank you.
That was amazing. Yeah,
you
why
want
don't
me
you
to sit here?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Great. Well, so I found that incredibly inspiring, and in fact, I had a number of questions I was going to ask you, and you covered all of them. And so it was just really, really tremendous. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think what I'm going to do is to really begin by opening up the conversation with the audience. And we have about, I think about half an hour or something, to 35 minutes to 40 minutes to really engage you all. And so before I do that, I want to introduce quickly the moderators who have been gathering questions. I can see them all huddled over there in the front row. And I just wanted to introduce to everybody very quickly who they are, and then we'll get into a discussion with Fei-Fei. So Matteo Carandini, Isabel Heyman, and Tricia Janik are going to be our moderators for today. Just a really quick background on them, on the 3 of them. Matteo is a vice president of research and professor at University College London, and his research is to investigate how the brain processes sensory signals and integrates them with internal signals to guide decision and action. Isabel Heyman is a clinical child and adolescent psychiatrist, honorary professor at Great Ormond Street Institute of Child Health at University College London, and she's an expert on obsessive-compulsive disorders in children. Isabel was actually the UK Royal College of Psychiatrists Psychiatrist of the Year in 2015-16. And then Tricia Janik, the distinguished Bloomberg, the Bloomberg Distinguished Professor in the Department of Psychology and Brain Sciences at Johns Hopkins University. Trish is also the chair of the program committee, as I mentioned earlier, and really deserves, again, much thanks for this amazing meeting. Thank you, Trish, again. She studies the biological basis of behavior through associative learning. So they've all been reviewing your questions, I know that. And I think what I'll do is start with Tricia to begin to come up here. I think you have a microphone there? Excellent. So Trish, do you want to get going?
So the first question we have for you, Dr. Li, from the audience is, can and should we develop artificial empathy in tandem with AI?
That's a great question, and I know this audience is so human-centered. The first question is about empathy. We talk a lot about the potential of empathy in machines. I think, first of all, empathy itself is a word that encompasses a broad spectrum. There is empathy that at the level of just recognizing what the others, other human or agent the situation is in, all the way to an internalized state of emotion and feelings and all that. So in terms of machine development, my hunch is that we're going to start with the shallower kind of empathy by understanding expressions, the kind of state another agent or human is in, and together with the development of neuroscience, brain science, cognitive science, we might be able to move deeper and deeper. I personally am already running into research where we would love to assess patient feelings or pain levels, or using their expression to understand the change of state. This is the, I know in natural language processing there is work on sentiment analysis and all that. So there is early budding work. In terms of the ethical question of should we even try to do this, and what are the vulnerability that we will create? I think it should be contextualized in all the vulnerability and ethical concerns of technology development, whether it's empathy or vision or speech or synthesis, like what people might hear again and all that. So I would say the answer would be yes, as a scientific innovation will probably continue driving this kind of work, but in terms of its ethical guideline, and especially on the application side, as a society, we should work together on this.
Matteo.
There's a question for the person or machine that does the subtitles, and it is, are you a person or a machine? And let's see if we get an answer. Possibly a machine. Okay. A question for Fei-Fei Li is it possible that little by little, under mostly engineering pressure, AI is spontaneously converging to algorithms and solutions that in fact model the brain?
That's an interesting question that coming out of a neuroscience society, because my journey in AI is not because of engineering pressure, it's the scientific quest that was inspired by neuroscience. And I know a lot of AI scientists take brain and neuroscience as a scientific inspiration of why we want to model the brain. From that point of view, whether there is engineering or product pressure or not, I think humans as a very curious animal will not cease the quest and exploration of how we can model the brain and understand its computational principle. About engineering pressure, there is AI as an engineering discipline does also have its own objective, and I'm sure many of you know this analogy, and I share with my students, flying, right? Are we replicating birds or are we making airplanes? The answer is a little bit of both, because airplanes are this massive engineering feat of human civilization, but the engineering of airplane does borrow the study of birds. In fact, it borrows it takes the shared foundational physics, which is aerodynamics. And so we're doing a little bit of both, even if the goal is for an engineering goal.
Isabel, could I just ask, I'm going to flip it around a little bit. You know, when we first met, or first spoke, you mentioned it in your introduction, and you said, oh, this is going to be like coming home, coming to the Society for Neuroscience meeting. And so in listening to you, did you get any of your inspiration from the early years of being exposed to neuroscience? And like, how has that affected the way in which you have thought about it?
Absolutely. I'm saying this not because I'm sitting in front of neuroscientists and potentially some of my professors, former professors, but my own journey as a scientist. You mentioned I was a physics major in undergrad. One thing I noticed towards my second half of my undergraduate study is some of the greatest physicists I loved, like Einstein, Schrödinger, they all turn their intellectual interest into life and brain at the end of their life rather than the atomic world. So I kind of follow that path, and my first entrance into the world of intelligence is through neuroscience. I even did a summer of molecular biology. I know, I ran gels for one summer. Didn't go very far. And I also participated in replication of Hubble and Wiesel studies. So, and then in PhD at Stanford, my co-advisor was Christoph Koch, and who I was doing cognitive neuroscience work with him. And I also did fMRI. So my entire journey in AI, there is a part of me that's constantly referring back to neuroscience, especially cognitive neuroscience, to look at how the brain represents the complex visual world. What are the neural correlates? What are the computational findings we have of the brain? And what are the cognitive goals of the brain as a computing machine? And I think that part of my intellectual upbringing and continued quest has been fundamental to the way I approach AI.
Great, thank you. Isabel.
So we've got hundreds of questions.
I'm sure you do.
I'm here all day.
And I just wanted to say that very many of them give you huge thanks. I just wanted to read out.
Thank you.
It says, thank you for the superb, thoughtful lecture and poignant examples. So very many people have commented on how moved they are by your talk. The first question I was going to ask, you've spoken about being in a neuroscience audience, but several people have asked, how do we educate the non-scientific public to not be fearful of AI and to help them believe, for example, it might be safer, better, more effective than a doctor, for example?
Yeah, this is a great question about public engagement. And frankly, even as a professor, I don't believe we should just preach whatever we believe. I think the more important way to do this is to invite the public and to engage with them, because everybody can participate in AI. Whether you write deep learning codes or not, there is a place for the public and many people to engage and shape the future of AI. So when people from the public ask me, how do we know if the future is not dark and fearful? My answer would be, come together, we can shape the future together. So, for example, we desperately need better AI communications, right? So you can be a writer, you can be an artist, you can be a designer, but if you engage with us, we can communicate better with the public what this technology is about. We desperately need a policymaker to engage with us, because this technology is going to impact so many sectors of our life. We need good regulatory policies. We need good incentive policies. So we need that kind of engagement. We also, as an educator, I really believe we need to engage with the education community from K to 12 all the way to continued skilling. Whether we're looking at reskilling American workers or worldwide workers, or engaging inclusive education of STEM and AI in early age, we need everybody's participation.
And Fei-Fei, presumably this is part of your inspiration for AI for all.
Yes, Diane, thanks for bringing that up. So in my infinite spare time, one thing I feel really important and passionate about is the inclusion and diversity issue in AI. In fact, I kind of woke up one day in around 2013, 2014, shortly after ImageNet Challenge, that historical moment happened. And as a technologist living in Silicon Valley, I was on the front seat observing this seismic transformation happening, possibly earlier than the public was aware of that. And I realized we've got a serious problem. This technology is going to impact humanity's future, and everybody at the steering wheel looked the same. And at Stanford at that time, I was the only woman AI professor in the AI lab for a long time. I happened to be the director, but I was still the only woman. And my students, I go to Neuroscience, I go to CVPR, I go to all these conferences, I just don't see many women, and I really don't see underrepresented minority. And if you believe machine values are human values, what we make reflect who we are, this is a dire crisis. So luckily with my former PhD student, Olga Rusakovsky, who is now a Princeton professor, she and I really share this passion. So in 2015, we started a pilot program. It's a summer camp for high school women to invite them to Stanford to join us for 2 weeks to learn about AI, to do hands-on research about human-centered AI. I even invited a group to do the clinical work I just talked about. And that was so successful. My favorite scene till today of that experience, can you imagine a group of 24 high school girls braiding each other's hair and talking about deep learning algorithms in the meantime during the breaks of lectures? It was just so human and so beautiful. So in 2016, so we did it at Stanford for 2 years. In 2016, at the encouragement of Melinda Gates, and also Jensen Huang, the CEO and founder of NVIDIA GPU, they seed funded us into a national nonprofit. So we expanded 2017 to 2 campuses, Stanford and Berkeley, for low-income family students in the East Bay Area. And that was also wildly successful. So we realized there's a national need. So 2019, this past summer, we are on 11 university campuses from East Coast to West Coast to the middle, Michigan, CMU, Arizona, and then Maryland, Columbia, Princeton, and 11 campuses, and we're still expanding. Our goal is to really move the needle to create the next generation AI leaders that will be a lot more inclusive and diverse.
Thank you. Thanks. Trish, I think yes. Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone is interested in opening a chapter in your university, you can talk to me.
Now, there's an offer, yeah. Tricia, yeah.
Okay. So since we're at the neuroscience meeting, we actually have had quite a few questions. Very interested in how you've talked about how neuroscience has led to inspiration for AI. But can you comment on how AI may benefit neuroscience research itself?
Yes, and I'm going to do it in a shallow and bad way. I do have tremendous colleagues at Stanford who are doing the forefront of this research. People like Surya Ganguly, Dan Yeomans. But machine learning is a tool, and coming out of this tool is tremendous mathematical optimization and computation capability. So, for example, the connectivity of the brain, even I heard the art and neurospace installation possibly used machine learning techniques to track neuronal from axons to dendrites to segment neurons. I know a lot of the connectivity work in neuroscience are using these kind of machine learning tools to process, like terabytes and terabytes of data, and only machine learning have that kind of throughput that humans or even crowd cannot possibly have that quantity. There is, in a field closer to my heart that at least I know something about is neuroimaging, that even back in 15 years ago, machine learning and pattern recognition algorithms start to help us to read out the kind of neural patterns or multivariate patterns that is more nuanced and more powerful than just simpler statistical analysis like regression. I've got a long-term collaboration with Professor Diane Beck at University of Illinois on this line of work. But there is a lot more. Like I said, for example, my colleague Surya Ganguly, he is looking at theoretical deep learning algorithms and trying to use that to corroborate models of neuronal learning and so on. So there is a lot of opportunity to use it either as a tool to enable discovery or as a inspiration to check on models of the brain computation or cognitive models and a combination of all this.
Thank you. Matteo.
We've got various questions about societal biases, and one of them is to fix these societal biases, should we become more comfortable over time with AI making better decisions than humans? Better here is in quotes. And who should make that final call on which decision to choose?
Great question. So there are really two questions. One is the society going to become more comfortable with machines making decisions? I think the answer is not, is that future going to come, is the future is already here at an alarming rate. Like, I now drive only with the map guidance on my cell phone. I don't even know how to get to my work anymore without a Google Maps. So we're getting so comfortable that some of this is worrisome already. In terms of a deeper societal question, or even getting into the human agency, the moral agency of decision making, I think we need to invite the whole society to make a decision on behalf of us. Just a month ago, I was in Vatican talking to theologians and Catholic leaders about the moral agency of machines. We also, in 10 days, Stanford will be inviting policymakers worldwide to talk about the kind of policies and laws we should have for machine decisions. So the answer is going to be nuanced, it's going to be complex, sometimes it's going to be sector by sector, depending on if the decision is a medical decision or if it's just buying your favorite piece of clothes. All this will have its own complexity, but we need to begin that process.
And as you were talking, of course, and really showed incredibly powerfully how important it is for those discussions to occur not just within the computer science department,
absolutely,
but across an institution.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
And so, also, of course, very important for any decision not to be an individual decision, but rather for there to be really common sets of guidelines and for things to be really institutionalized.
Absolutely.
And I think that came across so incredibly well.
I think it has to be a multi-stakeholder discussion. It cannot be just a bunch of engineers or computer scientists deciding, nor can policy be made without the engagement of all of us.
Isabel.
So this has been a huge theme for this audience about can AI help us with the problem of climate change and global warming? Just an easy question for you.
Yes, I get that a lot these days. And I think my answer is going to be the same as everyone in this audience. I really, really hope so. And of course, I think the reason I think I can hope that is because some of the climate issues are rely on data and rely on compute. And when that happens, the tools of AI and machine learning should be there in the front line helping, right? Our climate scientists, our naturalists, we need that kind of data. But it's not just about the scientific prediction of temperature or ocean, or there is also the human side. For example, my colleague Stefano Armand and David Lobel at Stanford are leading this study on using satellite imageries to assess sustainability conditions worldwide, especially in very, very impoverished and many war-infested regions of the world, where you simply don't have the human or government resource to understand how environments, agriculture, crops, human living conditions are being impacted by many factors, including climate. And their work using satellite imagery, computer vision, machine learning is right there providing the kind of insights and data that no government or no United Nations agency, nobody ever knew before. And that is super important. My colleagues studying refugees, we're already seeing climate refugees. And the human lives are going to be impacted. So not only AI can participate in the scientific analysis of climate, it can also participate in the policy, the human factors of climate. So I really, really do hope so, and I really do call on AI researchers to participate in this.
Yeah, thanks. Tricia?
So we have a number of questions that also are focused on healthcare applications, as you mentioned, but specifically from this audience on brain-machine interface, which of course is an approach that can help many disorders and pathologies, but in line with your notion of augmentation, what might we need to keep in mind as a society as we move forward with the idea of neuroimplantation, and what are the ethical concerns, et cetera?
That is a wonderful question. So, of course, I do not work in brain-machine interface, but I watch this field with great curiosity, scientific curiosity, and also its potential clinical implication. One lesson or one experience I can share is that, in my early career of AI as a scientist, I didn't think too much about social impact, because the science was so early. As scientists, we just focus on the science and getting something to work. But AI scientists have already gone through this journey. We go from trying to just make things work all the way to seeing this being deployed in a society that is impacting human lives. My prediction is those of you working in this fantastic technology of brain-machine interface will be going through the same journey as we do. Right now, you're probably focusing on just getting it to work. And then soon, you're going to hit breakthroughs that it's going to work really well. And then soon, it's going to be clinically viable. And soon, you're going to see that technology might be scaled up, and now suddenly we're going to face ethical societal issues. So the information or the sentiment that I want to share with you is that recognize that journey, recognize that responsibility, recognize the opportunity to invite that kind of multi-stakeholder conversation as early as possible, because at the end of the day, we're all part of this responsibility of making it benefit humans, not harm humans.
Thank you. Matteo.
Another theme that came up in lots of questions is about rich countries and poor countries. This is something you've just touched upon now in the Q&A, but a specific example of a question is, you've shown examples of AI intervention in several aspects of life in rich countries. How do you think all this can be used or translated for life in poor countries?
Yeah, great question. In fact, in my healthcare work, I think a lot about the poor, not necessarily divided by countries, but by socioeconomic classes, as well as by access to healthcare. Even in America, we have so many people who have impoverished access to healthcare, especially the vulnerables like chronic disease, like our aging population. So I think, again, AI is a tool, and every tool humanity has made is a double-edged sword. It can hurt us, and it can benefit us, starting from fire to electricity to steam to everything. So from that point of view, we should be very mindful that AI doesn't become another tool to polarize the distribution of access, polarize the distribution of wealth, to incite geopolitical conflicts and all that. So the good news of AI is it's a computing technology, and computing technology can have that kind of accessibility to worldwide population, sometimes easier than a local physical technology. So I hope, for example, again, in my healthcare work, telemedicine would become a area that that AI and also embedded in a broader technological context can be brought to per regions. Education is the same, right? There is a severe lack of teachers, and can we use technology, including AI, to to democratize the access of education?
Yeah. So I think we've got time for probably one or two more questions. So Isabel.
You've spoken a bit about the need to regulate and legislate and for governments eventually to get involved. But I've got a question about the other way round. Will we ever live in an era where AI algorithms will make laws out of big data processing? And they've used the example of global warming again, but do you think AI will ever help us create a fairer society?
Great question. My colleagues in Stanford Law School are actually very actively thinking about AI's usage in law, in legislation, in government. I think that if you reduce the technical part of this question down to, would AI technology be able to write documents, write it in logical, causal ways? I think from a technical point of view, there is one day that might come, right? But the bigger question is, what is law about? And how should law be legislated? What are the human implications? What is the governance of law itself? I think these are the questions that again exceeds technology, and we need to invite people. And at Stanford, we literally are actually collaborating with the law school on issues like this. So whatever AI can do, I hope it can participate in a beneficial way.
Thank you. You want to do, so thank you. Matteo, you want to,
Well,
you're going to...
There's a last question, if we
Perfect.
can ask a last question. We decided that this one reflects the young age of the audience.
Perfect.
And the question is AI a saturated field? Is it wise to choose AI as a profession when you go to college?
Perfect.
Yeah, that is, in a neuroscience audience, I have to be careful. You can choose neuroscience or AI. Absolutely not. I think AI is a very, very young field. Let's keep in mind, if you count, depending on how you count, there's a few different dates, but it's all about like 60 years. In the field of biology, the field of physics, the field of chemistry is way older. It's hundreds of years, even if you just count modern science. But if you go back to, so AI is a very, very young field. I do want to invite young people to consider majoring AI, but I do want to invite you to think in an interdisciplinary way. If you are an artist, if you like writing, there is a place for you. You don't have to necessarily major in computer science. You can minor in it. You can take classes. You can participate through, political science major. You can participate through music major. I'm not kidding. We have at Stanford HAI, we have an active collaboration between music and AI, machine learning. So the short answer is absolutely yes. And there is a huge opportunity for neuroscience and AI to collaborate. So major in both.
Perfect. Thank you. So we've come to the end.
Thank you.
That whizzed by for me. It was everything that I'd certainly hoped for and expected and more. You are an amazing scientist.
Thank you.
An inspiration. And, to just wrap this up, I just want to say how the inspiration, of course, is the way in which you certainly thought about a big problem and turned it on its head, and then just went for that and said, this is where we need to be, and this is what we need to do, with a lot of struggle. And I certainly read and learned that you didn't get funding for a lot of this early work because people thought you were a little insane. And so that's a real message to the young people in the audience and early stage scientists, like, just keep going.
Yeah.
And then the openness with which the openness that you had, so you developed this ImageNet and other things, and you put this out into the world. You didn't hold it into your group and said, look, we want to mine this because it just took us years to develop this. You put it out there for the world to really take advantage of. And then also taking head on, just like looking into the face of what the future might be, and not moving away and not moving back from that, but moving forward into that big problem, I think is just the inspiration, I think, that we all got today. And so thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Diane.
So just thanks again to the moderators. Thanks for being here today. Thank you to Fei-Fei for opening this incredible meeting, beginning the 50th anniversary, and enjoy yourselves through the rest of the week. Thank you all. Yep. Thank you.